I will be your hostess guide, and your host driver is Ray.
Hi, Ray.
Hi, Ray.
This community was founded as a United Empire Loyalist colony. Church on your left is the oldest Roman Catholic church on this island. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But for a great part, we're having a history lesson today. About 3 o'clock on your watch, you will see the world's tallest freestanding fiddle. Do you see that? And you'll see it. It is 5 ton. It was designed by a local artist and installed on our dock. It's an icon of Sydney. This community was founded in 1785. In 1497, England and other countries in Europe really had developed well. And they were busy and they were looking, in today's lingo, for new business opportunities, let's say. The New World, where we are now in North America, was opening up. Nobody really knew what was here. And so what England did, like many of the countries, they hired professional explorers. And England in 1497 hired an explorer and his fleet by the name of Giovanni Caboto. That would be Italian for John Cabot. And John Cabot was told by the king, I would say I was there at the time for the meeting, but I wasn't really. He was told before he left, John, I can just imagine this meeting. I have spent a fortune on outfitting you to get across to the New World. Let's hope you hit a pot of gold. And I want to know as soon as you arrive and where you arrive. John Cabot arrived on these shorelines of Cape Breton Island in 1497. He landed along these shores first. And when he arrived, he was able to fulfill the wish of the King of England. And that was that he had landed on what he considered to be a pot of gold. The waters were teeming with fish, codfish. And when the explorers arrived here along these shores of Cape Breton Island, they sent the word back. Well, all of the countries, 5 of them, the areas, England, France, Spain, we have guests on from Spain, Portugal and the Basque region, they sent fishing fleets here. This was a business deal because, you know, in Europe at that time, many of the countries had a high population of Roman Catholics. They had 140 meatless days to begin with, and then all of the other celebration days. Now, there was lots of fish in England and France and so on, but not nearly as much as here. And the word got back to these countries. They could send their fishing fleets here for 6 months of the year because the water didn't freeze, and for that period of time, and that would give them lots of time to preserve their fish. The harbor you came in this morning and docked, your beautiful ship docked, it's called Sydney Harbor. Prior to that, it was called Spanish Bay. You are currently driving through and around. Ray is taking us all around. So one, if not the most advanced native reserve in all of Canada. This community is totally independent of any government required assistance. Between 1926 and 1985, dirt roads, dilapidated housing, poor quality education, if any. In 1985, a descendant, Terry Paul was his name, he had decided that something had to be done. They have developed the land and, like a lot of people, got into the real estate business. This community today, only 40 years later, I mentioned, is one of the most, if not the most advanced in terms of independence, Native community in Canada. This is all part of the reservation. Actually, I say reservation because I want to indicate that in Canada, we refer to the Indigenous communities as reserves as opposed to reservations. Entire province, we are an island part of the province, and our total population is approximately 130,000. These homes, they're between 100 and 150-year-old. And you will notice that they are large, mostly made of wood, and they're designed so that the most expensive homes, the grand homes, we pass, and as we continue up this street, the homes will become more modest. 34, and one of the local carvers carved Saint Teresa. His version of Saint Teresa. This is Saint Teresa's church. It doesn't look like it's an old church. It was all agricultural farmland. The city gave it to Mr. Whitney to build a steel plant. There's nothing left of the steel plant today. Final closure and remediation of the land in the year 2000. All of the land you're looking at, in fact, this area was where the coke ovens were. We still have the largest population of Ukrainians east of Montreal. Now, I stopped at Orthodox Church. This was built in the early 1930s for the Caribbean community who came here from the Caribbean to work here. The immigrants, and mainly from Barbados. The priest who lives in the house next door, and the church hall is right beside it. The steel plant is right in this community, right there. And look, we have a greeter already. They knew, and they can hardly wait for your visit. You will go in, we'll spend about half an hour. The top floor is all exhibits.
Sure, you get and that's all.
No, only one. Thank you.
Yeah, no, take it.
As the furnace is being prepared, Bucky's continues.
Along the coast, and actually it's along the coastline of Sydney Harbour. Sydney Harbour, I already mentioned to you, is the closest sheltered harbour on the entire eastern seaboard, right down to Florida, in North America. It is 10 miles long. It's really made up of 2 bays. It's deep, and during World War II, we had a steel plant here. We had coal mines here. Do you not think that the Germans would, or whoever at the time, I think it was Germany, they wanted to come in? At Whitney Pier Museum, who went to work and built a museum, they wanted to keep the history alive. The Volunteer Historical Society in a place called, little village called South Bar, petitioned the government, don't destroy the last remaining battery. We want to keep it as a tribute to all of our military who lost their lives during World War II. They have done that, and so the remnants are there of the battery, including the observation tower, which and you could see, they could see for miles. And observation towers during World War II along the coastline were in the shape of church steeples, because there was a rule, a law that said, if it looks like a church, you cannot bomb it. All right, thanks, Ray. Sort of a little respite area. You see all the different flags? That is representative of many of the countries that people came from who lived here, and that pot that they're cemented into was a pot that was actually used in the steel plant when it was operating. snow crab along with other fish. The second industry is tourism. Thank you to the cruise ships. They bring lots of tourists. To your left, I want you to look over at 10 o'clock in the morning. You will see right now, you should see two large boats that look like ferries. Do you see those, or you will? To your left, those ferries are leaving from a community called North Sydney. That is where the Trans-Canada Highway basically ends, coming from British Columbia here. If you want to go to the province of Newfoundland, there, rail drive a little slowly. You can see them. And if you want to get to Newfoundland with a vehicle, the only way you can do it from anywhere in the world is to come to the port of North Sydney. And maybe on the left-hand side you saw a sandbar. It's a natural sandbar. Here it is here. And to your left. And it's a great inlet for when fishing ships come in. Fishing boats, I should say. Across the way. And you can see why the harbor is sheltered. Look at the land over there. And so this is where you will sail tonight. You'll go by all of those homes and know that this harbor, it only has one battery left, and that's because the community said, please, it was a last minute Supreme Court injunction that allowed that told the Army you can't go in and blast that last battery out. They want to keep it
around what was known as the defended port of Sydney. So when you look out on the points out here, each point that you see had a battery. Each battery had a couple of guns. And in 1990, the government was going around the coast and getting rid of them, blowing them up and wanted them gone. Oh, honestly, they were afraid somebody was going to get hurt playing in it, really, you know what I mean? But they were blowing them up, and this one was next. And so our society was formed in 90. The ladies up around the corner there, the entrance to the museum, we have a brand new 40mm gun that came off the HMCS Glace Bay, which is a local town. And we fought for 7 or 8 years to get it. We got it. It was put there 2 days ago. I brought it over. It's just on the other side. You can see the barrel sticking out. Which is anti-aircraft, anti-warfare, whatever. You know, it's a 40mm, good size gun marker from the netting that went across from down the harbor here across to the other side during the Second World War to try and stop the German U-boats from getting in the harbor. Well, they did get in the harbor. I mean, they got all over the island. They really wanted to get in and take the port of Sydney. They wanted the steel plant and the coal and everything. The Germans did, the German Navy. And their plan was to walk in, take over, get rid of us, park their Navy there and carry on like Bob's your uncle. So all these 7 batteries put a kibosh to that. And it wasn't for these, because when they look around and say, oh man, we open fire in this harbor within 30 miles of this place, we're getting blown to bits, right? So they hightail it out.
Hundreds of transport trucks carrying goods, and they also, to get to Newfoundland, have to go on that ferry. The ferries are huge. So, as I mentioned, Sydney Harbor, 10 miles long, made up of 2 bays, and I won't repeat myself again by telling you it's the closest sheltered harbor to Europe, and much of they could only bring with them what they could carry. You can imagine. And if they were fortunate, they were able to have a ticket given to them by their farmer, who for whom generations of their families they worked. Called Holy Redeemer. It is the largest physically right here. And this church now, it had a church hall behind it, but because of depopulation, they don't use that church hall. Many of the Roman Catholics attend the church in Sydney that I showed you, St. Teresa's. There you are, the Emerald Princess. If you look over this community, you can see at about 2 o'clock on your watch, that's the operating port. You can understand why there was a steel mill built right in this area, and it was all agricultural lands there. If you knew where to look, you would see approximately 7 different churches. This area embodies the history of the 20th century on this island, in this community. Provincial governments, it cost $400 million to decontaminate the soil. They've done that, and what did they do with the contamination? They buried it in cement in the ground. In the year 2013, everything was complete, and this has become, this whole area is like a public community park with some industrial buildings, which you're seeing as you go through. Well, to the Esplanade, the street right beside the dock. This is the area that was developed by Desbarres. This street happens to be called George Street, after King George III. Did I mention earlier, speaking of the king, this community, the first 300 founding citizens, 200 from Albany, New York, fleeing after the American Revolution in 1783. They were invited here, and they came here. This was the United Empire Loyalist Town. And 100 from England. You may be familiar with that. But on the right-hand side, you see where the people are standing. Some of you can or can't, but Ray will really slow down here. This is the Jost House, J-O-S-T. By the way, Amelia, do you see the name of the street? That is one of George and Charlotte's kids' names. This is the oldest. That house was built in between 1786 and 87. It was owned by a merchant, and obviously he had a lot of money. You can walk up from your ship and come in. It's all outfitted like it was back in 1786 when it was built. And there are animators there who are just excellent and will tell you the story. I don't know if there's a fee to get in, maybe an honorarium or a gift, a donation or something. Find us. The Fortress of Louisbourg in 1785, when they said no more French here, and so many buildings are made of stone. It's called the Royal Church, and you know, an interesting walk, if you were so inclined, is to come up and go in that church and go into the graveyard. There are graves there from before that church was built. That's another kind of museum, but they have their headquarters in there, and you can walk in and there are exhibits and so on. That's all free. A museum, and then they have their gift shop. And the bank decided after how many years, 100, 200 years, that they needed a new bank, large shopping centers. But there's some really unique shops along here, including a post office and the bank, artisans, crafters, and we have a lot of theater here. Highland Arts Theater. And those women are representative of a play that was presented about the women who stayed and worked in the mills when the men went away to war during World War II. So there are shops to go in, but not the type that you're thinking of. Not a lot of, for example, dress shops, shoe shops, more eclectic shops. This is wonderful, the Cape Breton Center for Craft and Design. The ship is alongside the road that's parallel to this one. This building that you see, opening this September, Nova Scotia Community College. That's where kids go after as part of their post-secondary to learn skills, trade, as well as professions. As your last little fling, we have time, we're going to take in this park called Wentworth Park. And that was named after a United Empire loyalist who came here. He had been a governor of one of the New England states. This is called Wentworth Park. Sydney, this would be a good time to let you know. We are named after the same Lord Sydney that Sydney, Australia is. That we even have our own opera house. If you look to the right, can you figure out where it is?